What's up everyone, I'm CallumOnToast, and in today's video I'm going to be showcasing the latest mythical Pokemon to be added to Pokemon Go that was available to catch for everyone during the 2026 Global Go Fest this past weekend, and that Pokemon is Zeraora, which, with a signature move of Plasma Fist, is actually the first 35 energy electric type charge attack I believe in the entire game, which is kind of crazy to think about since you do often associate the electric typing with some of the faster Pokemon in the game, and this is the first electric type Pokemon with a 35 energy electric type attack. Unfortunately, currently it has zero coverage moves whatsoever, so if you come up against a Pokemon that resists electric, unfortunately you're going to have a pretty rough time, but hopefully next season, now that it is available to everyone, they might end up buffing it and giving it some coverage. Now for the rest of the team, I'm actually running two other mythical Pokemon, both of which got buffed this season with Mew on Energy Ball, and actually Melmetal with a double buff moveset of Dynamic Punch and Flash Cannon, because I don't really want to use an Elite Charge TM to get double Iron Bash. Now that Surprise Nuke or Flash Cannon did actually come in clutch a few times, but of course you do lose that rapid 8-turn pacing, which also cost me a few games. Anyways, with that being said, let's just get into the question of the day. What were your overall impressions of the 2026 Global Go Fest? Now, I often don't answer the question of the day myself, but I thought you guys probably like to hear my opinions. So for me, it really just didn't feel like a Go Fest at all, but instead just a glorified Mega Mewtwo raid weekend, and as you guys probably know, I really just don't care all that much about raiding. Now, don't get me wrong, GoFest has always had a large focus on raids. Previously, you'd have the Saturday, which was more focused on wild spawns, the rotating biomes, and like the main questline and such, and then day 2 would often be more raid focused, but over the last few years, it seemed like raiding has become more of a big focus across both days, but then this weekend just took it to a new extreme where it felt like raiding was the only thing to do. There were no new shinies released at all, which, even though I'm not a shiny hunter, I feel like it's crazy that I've heard no one talking about this at all. Usually we'll get anywhere between like 3 and 6 brand new shiny lines, with the big one being a pseudo legendary, but this year we got literally nothing. Now they also didn't announce any of the wild spawns, just gave very vague typings for each hour, which kind of gave me nothing to look forward to hunting at all. So honestly, I just was not hyped prior to the Go Fest starting. And then for the raids themselves, I was in Kensington Gardens on the Saturday, so every lobby would fill up almost instantly, so I didn't really have loads of issues there, but even with full lobbies, you'd have raids where you weren't able to break all the shields, and it was quite frustrating. But then day 2, I wasn't feeling so well, so I stayed local, and there's just no way I was going to be beating any Mewtwo raids at all, so I completely missed out on day 2. Now like I said, I don't really care too much about raids. I was kind of just enjoying the free charge DM rewards that you get by beating Mega Pokemon. But yeah, I can imagine anyone not living in the center of a city, this event was probably just a massive letdown. So yeah, let me know in the comments what you thought about this event. But with that being said, let's finally get into the gameplay now. Let's go into the first battle, leading Mew into Altaria. Now, do note, I do kind of chop and change what the secondary charge move is on the Mew. I felt like Flame Charge didn't really help me all that much, certainly in situations like this, where all of my charge moves are completely resisted. However, I then had Dazzling Gleam for a while, where I didn't end up seeing any Dragon types, and then I got completely walled by like Kanto Ninetales, which is also a big problem for my Melmetal. Here, I'm gonna No Shield. I'm hoping I can survive and reach another Dynamic Punch. However, unfortunately, you can see I'm just barely not able to do so. But Mew does have some energy, but like I mentioned, we've only got resistant moves to hit here with the Energy Ball and the Flame Charge. I'm going for the Energy Ball as it is slightly cheaper, but it barely doesn't quite get the knockout. However, what I am hoping for is with an Altaria in the lead, there is quite likely going to be an Empoleon in the back. So the opponent swaps out immediately back into the Altaria. I'm not going to throw just yet. I'm hoping to grab a shield here, but we're going to go for the Plasma Fist, and Plasma Fist is not going to be shielded. However, they then throw straight away. That gives me a full Volt Switch in for free and allows me to get the full farm down. Now, if they have Waterfall on the Empoleon, we probably still end up losing, but if it is the typical Metal Sound as the fast move, I'm going to resist the damage here. They will not be able to fast move farm me down, and I'm just so loaded on energy. So I'm already at back-to-back Plasma Fist. I'm going to fire the second one straight away. Hopefully not going to allow a catch to happen here, but the opponent, very smart play there. They are going to overfarm. However, it's still not going to help them as the opponent now at back-to-back charge moves, but Zeraora, so spammy, able to reach yet another Plasma Fist, able to take out the Empoleon, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there into the next battle. I see Florges in the lead. So, this is going to be a fairly neutral matchup here. We are going to choose to stay in. I'm going to no-shield this. Of course, I do expect a Chilling Water. And then I think eventually I will swap into my Melmetal. I'm hoping the opponent swaps out straight away, because if they don't, well, I should be able to outpace them here if I was running double Iron Bash. However, the opponent is just going to choose to stay in. And unfortunately, they come in with a Seismitoad, which is not a great matchup for my Melmetal, especially now that I have been debuffed here, as that Dynamic Punch really does not do much damage at all. And of course, Flash Cannon is still going to be resisted, whilst yes, it is going to hit harder. It's not worth throwing in this matchup. At this point, we're just going to no-shield this, but the opponent, they end up baiting with an Icy Wind. That is a huge misplay on their end, because now we end up grabbing a shield advantage in a matchup where we definitely should not be getting that shield advantage. We're now going to come back in with the Mew, able to go for the Energy Ball. Energy Ball going to grab the final shield, and hopefully, if this is their only ground-type Pokemon, maybe Zeraora with a 2-shield advantage might be able to sweep another endgame. So at this point, we're just going to let the Mew go down here. Of course, Icy Wind will get the knockout from that range, and their final Pokemon is going to be a Seaking, and that is huge for me. We can go straight for Plasma Fist here. Plasma Fist, super effective, gets the KO. They come back in with the Florges, 2 more Volt Switches, and we're already at the Wild Charge. Wild Charge going to hit for huge neutral damage, gets the KO there. 1 more Volt Switch, takes out the Seismitoad, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's opponent into the next battle. We're going to see a Malamar in the lead. This time around, you can see we've got Focus Blast rather than Dazzling Gleam, so that is a little bit frustrating, but I'm going to use a shield here, and I think I might actually try and full send a Focus Blast. This is probably completely unnecessary, because we farmed up so much energy, they likely shield anyways, and they do end up shielding. However, we're able to catch a Foul Play. That's quite nice for me. Foul Play, of course, not going to hit anywhere near as much damage as a potential Superpower would, but we are hard punished with a Kanto Ninetales once again. So at this point, Weather Ball should get the knockout from this range, so I will just no-shield this, and it does get the KO. Now, we have no residual energy here on the Mew, as we did full send a Focus Blast, but at this point, we are just going to no-shield. I should live 1 Weather Ball, and then hopefully, by the time we reach the Energy Ball, maybe this will get the knockout. Of course, I did have the energy for the Focus Blast, but Energy Ball is going to get the KO there. Their final Pokemon is going to be a Waterfall Empoleon, so we do have a chance here. However, unfortunately, these Waterfalls are kind of chunking. So at this point, we are 1 away from back-to-back charge moves, so if they end up shielding this, I will be able to take them out here, as Zeraora should win CMP in this matchup, and the opponent actually does end up shielding. However, unfortunately, Plasma Fist gets the KO. I don't think I'm reaching a Wild Charge here, and no, I have to settle for a Plasma Fist. This is going to do big damage, but it doesn't get the KO. Mew on such low HP there. I tried to snipe and get to an Energy Ball at the last second, but I'm not able to do so. Foul Play takes me out, and unfortunately I lose that game. But GG's up on there into the next battle. We're going to see Shadow Dragonair in the lead. So, of course, we are still on Focus Blast for this battle. So, not the best matchup here, but I'm actually going to swap out. I'm hoping they've gone for a Wrap straight away, and the opponent actually does go immediately for the Wrap. Now, unfortunately, they come in with a counter Poliwrath, which is not a Pokemon I was expecting to see. However, of course, we're going to reach a Dynamic Punch. Dynamic Punch does decent damage, but now they can just farm me down. Now, we've got energy on the Mew, so I'm actually going to come in with my Zeraora. I'm going to look to shield the first charge move. Likely they do go for an Icy Wind, and now that's actually going to allow me to get slightly more farm here and come out with a charge move loaded. They're going to come in with a Grumpig as their final Pokemon, but we've got a lot of energy on the Mew, so going straight for Energy Ball here. Energy Ball is going to grab the first shield, but we can reach a second Energy Ball before the opponent even reaches an Aqua Tail. That grabs the final shield. The opponent, they commit to the farm down, but that's big for me because I've put them into range where a single Plasma Fist will get the knockout. So we take out the Shadow Dragonair, they come back in with the Grumpig, and the opponent is going to throw a charge move. I'm not really sure how much energy they've got here, so at this point, I'm just going to go straight for Wild Charge. This is going to hit for very big damage. Wild Charge actually gets the knockout there. Huge damage up against the Grumpig, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there into the next battle. You can see Blastoise in the lead now. I could potentially stay in that matchup because I do have Energy Ball. However, we do need to bait out any potential ground-type Pokemon, like a Clodsire, for example. And actually, Flash Cannon is going to very nearly get the 2-shot here. So, honestly, not that bad of a matchup since they are on Poison Sting. Poison Sting, of course, double resisted by the Steel typing. So, they're not dealing any fast food pressure whatsoever. Likewise, Thunder Shock also double resisted. That doesn't quite get the knockout there, which is unfortunate for me. I'm going to swap back into my Mew, sponge the damage from the Earthquake, and then get the Shadow Claw farm down. Now, unfortunately, the opponent is just barely going to outpace me to the charge move here, so at this point, I do just let the Mew go down. Now, I'm actually going to come back in with my Melmetal. Of course, Zeraora is an electric-type Pokemon. Volt Switch would hit for huge damage. However, we can at least sponge the damage from a Charge Move here. Then maybe what I should have done is thrown the Dynamic Punch there, look to either grab a shield or put them into range where I could Volt Switch farm them down. But instead, I don't. I saved the energy, and I don't think that was the right play because now the opponent comes in with their final Pokemon. All shields are down. So Plasma Fist is going to grab a shield from the opponent, but now they can just full send a close combat. A Melmetal, not quite as spammy now because I'm not on double Iron Bash. If we had double Iron Bash, honestly, we still have some play here because you can see we're already at back-to-back Dynamic Punches, but I take too much damage from the Karate Chops. I resist the rollout damage, but they can just roll out, farm me down, and unfortunately, I lose that game. But GG's up on there into next battle. I can see Gorgeist in the lead. Now, this is a bit of a tricky Pokemon here. However, of course, I do have Shadow Claw for some fast food pressure that is going to hit for super effective. Now, I could have basically anything for the charge moves. I'm going to go for an Energy Ball here, and Energy Ball is going to be shielded. This is definitely a matchup where I would prefer to have Flame Charge. However, we're on Dazzling Gleam this time around. They fire off a Seed Bomb bait before swapping out into Licky Licky. So at this point, we're going to come in with the Melmetal. I don't expect an Earthquake. They go for a Shadow Ball, and that is going to two-shot me, unfortunately. And then again, this is another matchup where not having double Iron Bash is going to be quite a negative for me because we put them into range where double Iron Bash would KO. However, I'm forced to full send another Dynamic Punch. So at this point, I'm going to look to shield here. I'm waiting for the opponent to swap back into the Gorgeist, and they do, but we've got Flash Cannon. Flash Cannon gets the KO from that range. They come back in with the Licky Licky, and then for some reason, I swap out and catch a Shadow Ball onto my Mew. I'm not really sure why I did that. That doesn't necessarily help me all that much because I did have quite a lot of energy on the Mew there. And also, I think I could have swapped out and thrown the Charge Move there for a CMP tie sack swap, but their final Pokemon is going to be a Carbink, and whilst Melmetal is pretty low at this point, it's still healthy enough to survive a Charge Move from Carbink. So here, we're going to go for back-to-back Wild Charges. There is no point in baiting here. I need to grab the final shield. Wild Charge grabs that final shield. We come back in with the Melmetal, and here I nearly make a mistake as I tried to go for Dynamic Punch, but we actually survived that. And now we can go for Flash Cannon. Flash Cannon, double super effective, easily taking out Carbink from that range, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there into the next battle. I see Dusclops in the lead. So, not a great matchup for me. I'm really swapping out here, trying to catch a Shadow Punch. They're going to come in with a Shadow Conkeldurr, which of course is not ideal for me. However, we do have quite a lot of energy already. We grab a shield advantage. They commit to the full farm down. So, I'm actually able to grab both shields here most likely, as the opponent is going to be desperate for switch advantage. Now, of course, they're going to have access to Brutal Swing. Brutal Swing is super effective. Brutal Swing going to deal big damage there, but they were still one away from back-to-back charge moves, so Energy Ball is going to get the knockout. We swap into Zeraora, but unfortunately, it's just a complete RPS team here. There is nothing we can do up against the Steelix because we've only got electric type damage that is double resisted. We've got a 2-shot advantage, but there's just nothing we can do, and so I concede the match. But GG's up on there into the next battle. I see Typhlosion in the lead. So not the best lead matchup for me, but kind of forced to stay in because, of course, I do have Melmetal in the back. It is quite likely that I grab a shield here, as most Mew probably are still running Surf. So at this point, I'm going to take the shield advantage. They go for a Thunder Punch there. And at this point, I'm just going to have to stay in. Now, we're going to come in with the Zeraora. Of course, these Volt Switches are going to deal some decent damage. It's quite likely that they bait with a Thunder Punch, and if they do bait, they will reach another Thunder Punch before I can farm them down. However, it is non-stab damage. It is also resisted, so I will no shield. However, that gets me incredibly low, but they're going to come in with their next Pokemon, which is going to be a Furret. I full send the Wild Charge, and then I come in with the Melmetal. I'm going to throw on CMP. Melmetal actually winning CMP up against the Furret, and Dynamic Punch is going to grab a shield there. So at this point, I feel like the opponent quite likely to be weak to the Melmetal in the back, so I'm actually going to shield there. I'm now going to look to overfarm just slightly, fire off another Dynamic Punch on the CMP tie, and we get the KO. And then final Pokemon is going to be a Wigglytuff, so of course, we don't necessarily need it here, but we're running Flash Cannon, so we're full sending it. Flash Cannon, super effective. It gets the one-shot up against the Wigglytuff. You love to see it, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there into the next battle. I see Florges in the lead again. So this time around, I am going to stay in. And again, they're going to outpace me to a Chilling Water. Might just choose to stay in this time around and at least go for a charge move first, and then swap into my Melmetal eventually. So here, we're going to go for the Energy Ball. Energy Ball, of course, now that we've been debuffed, they're not going to bother shielding, but I actually dropped their defense. Now, I do swap out Catch the Move onto my Melmetal. That doesn't really help me all that much, and I guess I did need to swap out there because I needed to bait out a Kanto Marowak. However, unfortunately, my Mew is fairly low at this point, and because I've been debuffed, these Dynamic Punches, they just don't do much damage at all. Now, I could have reached a single Flash Cannon, but I think 2 Dynamic Punches likely does more damage there. Anyways, we're going to come back in with the Mew. I'm going to go for a Energy Ball straight away here, forcing a CMP tie with the next Bone Club, and if they end up shielding here, unfortunately, I'm going to have to double shield my Mew because I just have no way of KOing with my Zeraora. So the opponent's going to swap back into Florist. So what we're going to do, we're going to bank the charge move. We're going to swap into our Zeraora as the opponent's going to go for a Trailblaze here, which makes sense as we were so low. But now, because they don't debuff me, we get the full farm down. We kind of have to just full send a Wild Charge here. Even then, I'm not sure if this KOs, but it grabs the final shield. We need something incredibly weak to Mew in the back here as we go for the Energy Ball. So Energy Ball is going to win CMP. We get the knockout, and they do actually have something kind of weak to Mew here, as of course I'm resisting Confusions, dealing super effective with the Shadow Claws, but even then we're just way too low there, so I lose that game. But GG's up on there. Into the next battle, we're going to see Shadow Celio in the lead. So I'm actually going to choose to stay in this matchup here. Unlike the Blastoise where we did swap out straight away, I'm actually going to stay in. We're going to go for the Energy Ball, grab a shield advantage, and now I will look to swap into my Melmetal. Now, if they do have a hard answer here, then maybe I should have swapped out straight away, but they're actually going to catch it onto a Unova Stunfisk, which with a big energy advantage isn't actually the worst case scenario because, yes, of course they are triple resisting Thunder Shocks, but Dynamic Punch is still going to deal for some decent damage. I can just safely shield up a Mud Bomb here, and then my switch clock is now coming up. So at this point, I'm going to bank the Dynamic Punch, swap out, catch the move onto my Mew, and the opponent is going to go for a bait with a Discharge. But of course, I do still need to come back in with the Melmetal, as Zeraora has triple resisted damage as the only thing it can throw. At this point, the opponent is going to no-shield the Unova Stunfisk, which is quite nice for me. And now they come in with their final Pokemon, which is going to be a Kingdra. I'm going for Dynamic Punch. Dynamic Punch going to be no-shielded. And here they are going to throw just before I reach the next move. They have to full send the Surf, and they do exactly that. But now we come in with the Zeraora. I can shield it, and I believe if the opponent ends up baiting with a Body Slam, yes, they will reach another Body Slam. However, it's not going to get the knockout, and by committing to a full fast move farm down, I'm just one away from back-to-back charge moves. So at this point, unless this is a CMP tie, first Plasma Fist grabs the final shield. We could have full sent a Wild Charge, but it's going to be unnecessary as Plasma Fist gets the knockout anyways, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there. Into the next battle, we see Shadow Diggersby in the lead. This is quite tricky for me because I do have resisted fast move pressure, and obviously Energy Ball is going to hit for super effective damage. It should actually two-shot them, which is quite nice. However, unfortunately, because we've got no fast move pressure across the entire team, it's going to be quite tricky to take out this Pokemon. So at this point, the opponent is going to be able to outpace me, but they actually swap out into a Swanna. So we come in, look at the insane Volt Switch damage. However, unfortunately for me, I think Arcjet is probably going to get the knockout, so we end up shielding there. They come back in with the Diggersby. It's quite likely that they bait, but I'm going to shield anyways, and they do bait with the Fire Punch, so that is unfortunate for me, but I didn't want to waste all of this energy, so what I'm looking to do, go for a Wild Charge, then for a Plasma Fist, and then look to swap out of this matchup. So the opponent actually shielded up the Wild Charge there, which wouldn't have got the KO anyways. We can now go for that combination play, banking some energy, going for the Energy Ball here, but the opponent's final Pokemon gonna be a Seaking, and they do get the perfect Peck farm down. So of course, Zeraora does have some residual energy, but we're going to come in with the Melmetal, tank the Draw Run to the face, fire off a Dynamic Punch on the CMP tie, winning CMP. Honestly, I was quite surprised with Melmetal winning CMP up against certain Pokemon. Honestly, I've not played this Pokemon in quite a long time, so I wasn't really sure what its attack stat is relative to everything else. However, unfortunately, the opponent does not allow for the farm down. They snipe with the Fire Punch from that Shadow Diggersby, taking out Zeraora, and unfortunately, I lose that game. But GG's up on there. Into the next battle, I see Shadow Kanto Ninetales in the lead. So unfortunately, my charge moves are going to be resisted, but we're still going to have a better time in this matchup rather than with our Melmetal. So the opponent fires off the Weather Ball, but then they swap into a Corviknight. So at this point, honestly, I'm not sure if this was necessarily the right play because we come in with our hard answer, but then that means I've still got my Melmetal, which will be aligned likely to the Kanto Ninetales. Even if we do have switch advantage here, of course, Mew doesn't have anything to throw into the Ninetales, but on the plus side, they do come back in with the Ninetales, and we can go straight for Plasma Fists. So at this point, the opponent is going to look to overfarm. I'm actually going to double shield my Zeraora here because now I should be able to grab the final shield here or just straight up get the knockout. And honestly, either of those are perfectly fine. We do get the KO, and then final Pokemon gonna be a Shadow Malamar in the back. So this is actually quite scary for me. As of course, Foul Play gonna be taking out the Mew, but we reach back-to-back charge moves now here. You can see I actually reached Energy Ball and a Flame Charge, so I should have gone the other way round, gone for Flame Charge first, boosted up my attack stat, and then Energy Ball would put them into Thunder Shock farm down range. Whereas now, unfortunately, I'm not farming them down. The opponent will reach a Superpower, and this is a Shadow Malamar. Superpower does huge damage, but it doesn't get the KO. It also drops their attack stat, which means I'm able to hang on, live the Psywave damage, Dynamic Punch gets the knockout, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there. Into next battle, we're going to see Mew into Shadow Annihilate. So, of course, this is a great lead matchup for me. The opponent going to be safe swapping into Licky Licky, and we can respond with the Melmetal. Of course, I'm going to no-shield the first move. They don't farm up to a potential Earthquake this time around, which is fine with me. So, we're going to go for a Dynamic Punch. Dynamic Punch, as I've already mentioned here, going to deal big damage. It would put them into range where a single double Iron Bash would KO. However, unfortunately, because we're not running it, we do have to waste a little bit more energy. At this point, I might as well maintain alignment here. We are going to look to overfarm in this matchup as much as we can. We actually throw on CMP, which is quite risky because the opponent did now have the opportunity to swap out and catch back onto the Annihilate. And here, I actually swap back into my Mew anyways, which honestly, not always the best play here, but I couldn't really afford to allow them to farm me down. So we're able to go for Energy Ball. We actually grab a shield there and drop the defense, which is really nice. And their final Pokemon is going to be a Azumarill. So that's a great matchup for the Zeraora in the back. Of course, we do have coverage here with the Energy Ball. Energy Ball is going to hit for super effective. It does about 50% of their HP. They do just narrowly outpace me to the next move, and Play Rough is going to get the knockout, but we've actually put them into perfect farm down range for the Zeraora, coming out with the Wild Charge loaded. So of course, I'm just going to unleash this straight away. Wild Charge takes out the Shadow Annihilate, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there into the final battle of this video, leading into a Quagsire. So, of course, this is definitely the matchup we want, and there is a chance that we can take them by surprise and land an Energy Ball. However, Mew, of course, typically known to have lots of different charge moves here. There is the chance that they do just end up shielding anyways, respecting the damage, and unfortunately, they do end up shielding there. So at this point, I'm going to have to match shields in this matchup because this is really the only Pokemon that I can use to take them out. They end up baiting, oh sorry, not baiting, they full send a Stone Edge, but then they make a really nice catch there, catching double resisted Energy Ball onto their Talonflame. We can come in, we can actually go for one more Shadow Claw, swap out into Zeraora, and still win CMP with the Plasma Fist and get the KO. However, I'm thinking maybe instead what I should have done is use the shield and then committed to a full farm down. But anyways, we're going to see the Quagsire coming back in. I'm going to full send a Wild Charge. This is resisted damage. However, Wild Charge gets them very low, but it doesn't quite KO there. And honestly, if I just waited a few turns, I could have swapped out, caught the charge move onto my Mew. However, that definitely would not have helped me because they've got Unova and Stunfisk in the back, and this is an absolute nightmare Pokemon for my backline. Dynamic Punches, you can see we will need 3 of them to get the knockout here. What I can do is actually swap into my Mew, outpace them to the Energy Ball, but maybe I should have waited one turn to try and force a CMP tie. However, I guess it doesn't really matter anyways because we don't get the debuff with that Energy Ball. Of course, Mud Bomb gonna get the knockout, and there's just nothing Melmetal can do at this point. We know Dynamic Punch will not get the KO, so I just allow the opponent to throw the charge move. Mud Bomb takes out the Melmetal, and unfortunately I lose that final game. So that's going to be it for today's video. If you did enjoy it, please make sure you leave a like, leave a comment letting me know, and as well, don't forget to respond to the question of the day if you haven't done so already. And if you want to see more content like this in the future, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on post notifications. That way you'll be notified whenever I upload a new video. Now, if you want to take your support to the next level, you can become a channel member with perks including early access to new videos, shoutouts at the end of each video, custom loyalty badges, and custom emojis to use in the comments of every video. I want to say a massive thank you to everyone that has become a channel member already. Your support is greatly appreciated. And with that being said, thank you so much for watching today's video, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.